Hey guys, and welcome back to another military history uncovered video. Today we're going to be looking at Napoleon's middle guard. So just before we get started, I just wanted to share with y'all that this video actually took me 3 or 4 days to do. So it's one of my it's one of the videos that's taken me longer to do actually. Now Napoleon's middle guard, before we get started, it was part of basically the Imperial Guard. It was 1/3 of his Imperial Guard, but about a little less than 1/3 of his Imperial Guard was Old Guard. Then the second most was probably Middle Guard, and then the most was Young Guard, because in the Young Guard there was just so many recruits that they could fill. Now Old Guard, you had to be like really good, so there weren't that many. Middle Guard was kind of like middle of the field. So I just wanted to share that with y'all. So now that we have that down, let's get into the video. Okay, so what we're going to be looking at today is basically when the middle guard was created and disbanded, the number of middle guard, the number of units, the requirements, the equipment, the middle guard's greatest triumphs, which there's actually only 2 that I could find that were like really triumphs, and the middle guard at Waterloo. So let's get into it. Okay, so when they were created and disbanded. They were created in 1806, and Napoleon created them because he wanted something that he could throw onto the battlefield that wasn't his old guard, but was a little bit worse than his old guard. So he just wanted something that was like middle of the field soldiers, but were above average soldiers. So these soldiers were from Napoleon's 1806 to 1809 campaigns. And basically some needed 4-year service, some needed 5, some needed 8-year service. It really depended on what kind of soldier you were in the middle guard. Now, they were disbanded in 1814 whenever Napoleon abdicated the first time, but came back in 1815 and then were disbanded again later in 1815. Okay, so how many middle guard were there? So in 1806, there were 8,000 middle guard. In 1807, 5,000, so it dropped there because of some of Napoleon's campaigns. In 1808, it went back to 7,000. In 1809, it stayed at 7,000. 1810, 15,000. 1811, the same. 1812, it dropped because of the Russian campaign. In 1813, it rose to 20,000. In 1814, it rose to 25,000. In 1815, at Waterloo, there was only about 3,500, maybe a little more. So this is pretty much up and down from 1806 on, and the highest was in 1814, even though that's pretty late, whenever Napoleon's kind of trying to retreat back to Paris. But in 1815, they were all the way down to 3,500 because through the years they had taken a lot of soldiers that had, they've taken a heavy toll from the campaigns. Okay, so now the units of the middle guard. So in 1806, they had 4 regiments, 2 grenadiers, or the 2E grenadiers and the 2E chasseurs, and 2 fusiliers. One that was grenadiers, one that was chasseurs. Then 6 years later, they had the same 2E grenadiers, same 2E chasseurs, which had been disbanded through the time and then re-raised. They also had the same fusiliers. They also had 2 Velites. One was of Turin, one was Florence. They were Italians, and they had the NCOs of the Young Guard. Now, like 1 or 2 years later, they had the Fusiliers, Grenadiers, Fusiliers, Chasseurs, but now they had instructor battalions from Fontainebleau, which was Napoleon's palace in Paris. That also, they consisted of the best men of middle and young guard. So these were like the best recruits that he could find that, in the middle and young guard. Now, a couple years later, in 1815, time of Waterloo, they had around 3,500 men, so they had 3 chasseur battalions and 2 grenadier battalions. Okay, so now for the requirements. So this picture shows basically on the soldiers' sleeves what a private, corporal, furrier, and sergeant major would have looked like. So private is 1 year, corporal's 2, 3, 4, and 5. and so on. So basically they had the 2E grenadiers and the 2E chasseurs. In 1811, both needed 5 years experience, but in 1813, the first battalions needed 3 years, and the second two, 8 years. And the Fusilier grenadiers and Fusilier chasseurs, all the troops needed 4 years experience. So you can see these guys weren't as good as the old guard. They didn't have as much experience, but they had a lot more than the young guard, and I can see why Napoleon would have definitely trusted them to take the field and win him a victory. Okay, so now for the equipment of the middle guard. So in this picture you can see kind of just the basic things. So they had a full-length red, blue, black, and white uniform. The headgear, basically either they would have an all-red feather, which was a Fusilier grenadier, and a red/green feather, which would be green, sort of like the bottom 1/3 of the feather was a Fusilier chasseur. Now they had a backpack and a blanket, which was basically sort of like a camping, like a sleeping bag. That was just so they could sleep on it. And then they would have their ranks on their arms. And you can see right here, this guy is obviously a private. And they would have their musket. Now, these two battles I found, out of all the battles of the Imperial Guard, basically the middle guard of the Imperial Guard was in, I found Jena and Eylau. So in Jena, Napoleon deployed the Imperial Guard to hold the French center until Ney could be rescued. So mainly he put the middle guard, mostly middle guard, on like in the center with some old guard and some young guard. Now this basically was because his center was going to break. So by putting the Imperial Guard, the middle/young and old guard, but mostly middle guard, by putting them on in the center, they held the center and caused it not to break, which basically won him the victory that day. Now at Eylau, at one point Napoleon was actually captured because he was using a church tower as a command post, and he was nearly captured, but the members of his personal staff actually held off the Russians long enough for his guard to get there and push them back and win him a victory that day as well. Okay, so this is Waterloo, or the middle guard at Waterloo. So the middle guard at Waterloo basically was the main assault that Napoleon used. He basically thought that by pushing them up and making them try to take the field, that would salvage a victory for him. So he sent in 5 battalions of middle guard, around 3,500, 4,000 troops. He sent in 3 battalions of old guard, which were actually only held in reserve, which I think was kind of stupid. And he sent in troops on the left and right flank to then hold the flanks, and also pushed up artillery. Well, 3,500 or 4,000 middle guard, yeah, they're good. They have a lot of experience, right? But up against, 20, 30,000 of Wellington's British soldiers, they weren't really going to do much. So I think that was kind of stupid, and that he should have sent up the old guard with them, or at least some other support. And actually, after he sent them up, they ended up running, which caused a chain rout, because now everybody was hearing that the guard had been broken, so they all were routed. And by the end of the battle of Waterloo, all that really stood was a couple battalions of old guard protecting Napoleon's retreat, which is at the time that they said the guard dies but does not surrender. So I just thought that's really interesting how that all worked out. Okay guys, thanks for watching the video. Make sure you like and subscribe before you go. This was actually a really fun one. I'm probably going to be doing a little bit more on Napoleon before I go on to another another time period. And so probably my next video will be on the Battle of Waterloo, and then I'll do one about the Young Guard. Also, I'm going to be uploading some stuff about whenever we visited France, me and my mom and my sister, and some things we saw there, which will give y'all an insight to kind of the stuff that the Germans did during World War II that we actually got on camera while we were there. So that'll be really interesting. I'll have probably 5 to 10 of those. So just make sure y'all come back, and I hope y'all enjoyed the video. See y'all next time.